This podcast is supported by MIDI Health. Are you in midlife, feeling dismissed, unheard, or just plain tired of the old healthcare system? You're not alone. In fact, even today, 75% of women seeking care for menopause and perimenopause issues are left entirely untreated. But it's time for a change. It's time for MIDI. MIDI's not just a healthcare provider. It's a women's telehealth clinic founded and supported by world-class leaders in women's health. Their clinicians provide one-on-one, face-to-face consultations where they truly listen to your unique needs. They offer a full range of holistic, data-driven solutions that isn't one-size-fits-all care. This is care uniquely tailored for you. At MIDI, you will find that their mission is clear: to help all women thrive in midlife, giving them access to the healthcare they deserve. Because they believe midlife isn't the middle at all. It is the beginning of your second act. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized, insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
From Estero, Florida, this is a One Extraordinary Marriage show, where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. I'm Tony DeLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call or text us on the HUG hotline at 858-876-5663, or send us an email to hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. In today's episode, we're addressing how chronic illness, hormonal imbalance, and lifelong medical conditions can impact intimacy in your marriage and what you can do to stay connected through it all.
And there's a quote from Elisabeth Kubler Ross that says, "Beautiful people do not just happen. They are forged through trials, struggles, and loss." And I think that really, as we talk about this intersection of lifelong medical conditions or chronic conditions and the 6 pillars of intimacy in your marriage, I think so many of those couples that we've seen over the years are those beautiful couples that have been forged through trials, struggles, and loss. And we're going to be talking about that in today's episode. But first, we start every episode with a hug. And, a hug is really our opportunity to acknowledge the intentionality that you're bringing into your marriage, to recognize where you're addressing one pillar or another and saying, this is what we're focused on. And this hug comes from a comment that was on a post in the One Family private Facebook group that simply said, "We worship together every night, every Monday night. We worship, pray, talk about everything going on in our lives, kids, our marriage, etc. It has changed our lives, and we're so much more connected all the time."
Focusing in on that spiritual intimacy pillar.
Absolutely. And, it really does highlight the fact that a lot of times it's the little things that make a difference in your marriage and make you feel connected. And, as Tony said at the top of this episode, we're addressing how chronic illness, hormonal imbalances, and lifelong medical conditions can impact your marriage. And I want to say from the get-go, Tony and I are not medical professionals.
Nope.
We are not advising you on what to do or what not to do when it comes to your treatment, your regimens, or whatnot. This is marriage education. And as always, when it is something medical, seek out the direction of your medical provider. What we're talking about today is how all of these things impact your marriage. And, it's a reality that most couples are going to face that many couples, but I think most couples are going to face likely at some point in time in their marriage. It might not be a chronic condition, but these health challenges that come, and we've talked about this in bits and pieces over the last 15 years, but I've never really dedicated an entire episode to looking at this type of health challenge on marriage.
And I just want to make sure we're going to give you or let you know where we're at here. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about mental health here.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure if you're dealing with like depression, suicidal ideation, like massive anxiety, things of that nature, that's not what we're discussing here today.
Although I will say for those couples that are dealing with this life, like obviously if you've got suicidal ideations, please go immediately get help. Couples that are dealing with lifelong depression and anxiety in their marriage, there are strategies and practical tips that will still be applicable to them for this episode. And, I think it's important to know that the CDC has reported that 6 in 10 adults in the U.S. have a chronic disease, and 4 in 10 adults have 2 or more chronic conditions. So Tony's shaking his head. When you start thinking about that, you realize how our health, how deeply it intersects with our marriages. And, these conditions can be things anywhere from chronic pain conditions. We've got some dear friends that this is a huge factor in their marriage. Things like fibromyalgia, arthritis. You can have those hormonal imbalances that can be hard to correct, whether it's low testosterone or you've got thyroid issues, or even if we can just talk about the window of time that is the menopause journey that can be, a couple years on up to 10 or 15 years. You have autoimmune diseases like lupus, like multiple sclerosis. You do have mental health conditions. Again, we're not talking suicidal ideation, but long-term depression and anxiety, diabetes, heart issues, cancer treatments, all of these things over the course of the illness, over the course of the condition, and even over the course of the marriage. Think about that. And how it's not just impacting, if you are the one suffering, if you are the one dealing with this condition, it is clearly impacting you. We are not minimizing that. But it's fair to say, and I think it deserves a lot of attention, it's not just you that's being impacted. It's your spouse and your marriage. Mm-hmm. And it's how do the two of you get into a place where you are navigating this together as a team?
Well, in our vows, it is said, and many of us read our vows, and there was a part, in sickness and in health, and hence why the episode title is Beyond in Sickness and in Health, because that is something many of us said on our wedding day, not knowing that we may be walking into something that is not in health.
Right.
That our spouse may end up having to deal with sickness in their body, or we ourselves may have to address that with our own bodies deteriorating in some way, shape, or form.
And we've gotten countless emails over the years from couples where, something physically traumatic has happened. So there's been, a health challenge, and it has impacted their, the two pillars that I hear most often being impacted are the emotional intimacy and the sexual intimacy. And, you start getting into that, and, what does that look like for a couple? How do you continue to honor those vows that you made? Because Tony and I made them, I will tell you, on October 5th, 1996, in Sickness and in Health was definitely part of the vows that we exchange with one another. Mm-hmm. And we know we're not the only ones. And, recently we asked the one family, what has this looked like for you? And I also want to just share some research, some statistics that were very eye-opening to me, and the pillars that they correspond with, because I think it's important not to just focus solely on the sexual and the emotional, because those are the two that were oh yeah, I can totally see how that would happen. But research from the Journal of Health and Social Behavior shows that 73% of couples report that chronic health conditions significantly impact their sexual relationship. So yes, I am starting with the sexual. Additionally, a study published in the Journal of Marriage and Family found that 68% of couples experience increased stress and communication challenge when one spouse has a chronic condition. So there's your emotional. So you've got 73% talking about sexual intimacy, 68% talking about emotional intimacy, but that's not it. According to a 2023 Kaiser Family Foundation study, medical debt affects 41% of American adults, creating significant financial strain on marriages. And we know that from ourselves. We've not specifically dealt with chronic health conditions, but we have had those medical bills over the years. And it wasn't even us. It was when our son had his ACL, and we saw all. He was in physical therapy, and I just remember those like every week, you guys. I was getting 2 or 3 bills from the physical therapist, and I just remember creating my folder, going, "Oh my gosh!"
And if you're dealing with a long-term chronic illness, what does that look like? How, finding insurance. So your financial intimacy pillar.
Absolutely. Then the Commonwealth Fund reported that 45% of adults with chronic conditions have limited their social and recreational activities due to health. So now we've got recreational intimacy. we actually end up with 4 out of the 6 that there is research that's been done on. And this is significant because all of those pillars are being impacted. And there was this one there is, here's the silver lining, right? Because, well, let me give you one other statistic and then I'll give you the silver lining. The American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy said only 38% of couples receive any guidance on maintaining intimacy during these health challenges. So it's a very low number, right? So we've got all of these like sad numbers. But the University of Rochester has a report that shows that 69% of couples say that navigating health challenges together ultimately strengthen their relationship. And this bears out with just some of the comments that we got from all of you that talked about how these chronic illnesses, health challenges helped you work together, be more concerned for one another, develop empathy for one another. And so those, I was like, oh, thank God for the one family, giving me hope in all of this, because you can really get into these places where the dynamics shift in a huge way when you're both dealing with this, right? And there are some dynamics that the research kind of says, can be very common in marriage. And I just want to bring this up because even if it's not a chronic condition, I think some of you are going to see yourselves in this, even just like shorter term illness and things like that. And I just want you to be aware of it, because while we're talking the bigger scope, sometimes we need to be aware, even on a small scale, how we fall into this. Right. So one is like that caregiver patient, helper being helped dynamic, where one spouse is the caregiver and the other feels like a burden. And you can get into a place where if you feel like a burden, you're not going to ask for things, or it's not like those other pillars of intimacy. You can just see them start to be like, okay, well, we're not going to do that because I'm sick, or we can't because my spouse is sick. And so you just get into this place where, every pillar is feeling a little wobbly, right? You can get into a place where there's an intimacy shutdown, where, specifically sexual intimacy, and the statistics bear this out, that stops altogether because you're afraid of causing pain, of discomfort, of making the symptoms worse. Maybe there isn't even a desire. This comes up in a lot of the emails that we've received over the years, that due to illness, one spouse has zero desire. And
in the emotional intimacy, if you don't have the emotional intimacy as well prior to maybe the chronic illness and being able to discuss it. But I would also say it's tough. I think even when we've been sick for shorter periods of time, how much that just is off the radar. So I can only imagine, with chronic illness, how to discuss this, right? And then to bring it like, okay, we want to be sexually intimate. I know we've talked about in other episodes over the years, it doesn't always have to be intercourse, right? So that's something that would have to be discussed as well. And how does the couple feel about pleasuring themselves in front of their spouse, or what that may look like. But yeah, I could see it. It's if you're hurting, in any way, shape, or form. I mean, what was it? Earlier this year, I had the flu really bad for a couple of days, right? Because it just hit me. But I could only imagine if you're in that state, and maybe not, I was laid out, but even slightly, like say it was 50% or 75% of less of how I felt, I could see myself getting into a place where it's like, yeah, this takes a lot of work, and I don't know if I need to really even deal with it, because I'm just tired, I'm hurting, I just don't want to think about it, and I know that would impact you as well.
Absolutely. So you've got that helper versus help dynamic. You've got this intimacy shutdown. You may even have a comparison trap, comparing what your life is now to what it used to be, and finding yourself looking backwards or looking sideways, right? I think it's not just like what we used to be, but also like what everybody else is dealing with.
Well, I find myself getting caught in the comparison trap just as I age. You know what I mean? And and you bring it up here, and I'm like, oh man, I got to think through this one, because I compare myself sometimes to, my 35-year-old self or my 30-year-old self, and waking up in the mornings, most mornings now, and there's aches and pains somewhere. in catching myself going like, oh my gosh, like I didn't always feel these pains, and I don't feel like I'm doing anything that crazy anymore. That's the other thing. It's not like I'm riding 200 miles on my bike anymore, or riding even 30 miles on my bike. Like when I used to really put it out there, and
Sure.
what that was like when I
trust
was really like going after my cycling and my ultra endurance athletic endeavors. And so I think even now in my own life, I can catch myself going like, oh, well, it used to be like this. So I can, again, imagine with a chronic illness what that can do to you.
And the other dynamic that shows up a lot, I've had this conversation with many wives over the years, is just you get into this place of the silence, right? Where you're not talking about how the health challenges are affecting your connection because you don't want to add more stress. You don't want to feel selfish. So you just bear it. But that starts to create more disconnect as well, because there's just like, well, everybody's just bearing it silently, drifting apart. And
this can happen even when you're not in a chronic
well, sure.
Right. And so I just want to say,
that is definitely not.
Even in our marriage, as Elisa was going into perimenopause, I noticed this was starting to creep into our lives because Elisa was trying to figure out what's going on and wasn't sharing much in those earlier days. And so I could tell something was happening, and that was affecting our connection because she wasn't expressing what was going on. I was trying to guess, which created conflict at multiple situations or multiple times. And so I see this as being, of all of them, this can be, I think, the most loneliest because you want to be able, as a caregiver or somebody who is on the healthier side, you want your spouse to be, you want them to feel comfortable. You want them to feel good. I would suspect, this is just me thinking through, like, how would I act in this situation if Elisa were to have some sort of chronic illness? I would feel like, hey, you got to give me some feedback. There needs to be a feedback loop. And I know Elisa, because she will shut down. This will be Elisa for sure if something were to happen. It would be like, what's going on? I'm okay. And it would be more silent because Elisa is fine not expressing that at times. Where I'm more like, hey, you need to loop me in here, because if not, then I'm going to get really frustrated. Yes.
Everything that you just heard has actually happened in our marriage in those times when I've been sick. And, so you look at that and that's just a small little window into Tony and I. But we need to talk about what are some of those practical strategies that the two of you can use, whether you are dealing with a chronic illness or just something that's been going on for a little while. And we're going to talk about that after this break.
DSW, Designer Shoe Warehouse, is the one-stop shop for all your footwear needs. With sneakers, boots, and everything in between, for every style, mood, and occasion, you'll definitely find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. DSW has what you need, but more importantly, they have what you didn't even know you wanted. You never know what you'll find at DSW. Find the shoes that get you at prices that get your budget at DSW stores or dsw.com.
I love GoPure, and I'm excited to share this with you. Living here in Southwest Florida, I definitely think about sun exposure, especially on my neck. I've seen what happens when we don't take care of it. We spend so much time caring for our face, but what about our neck? Even heading into fall, this area is still exposed with open collars and V-necks. Neck skin is thinner and more delicate than facial skin, making it especially vulnerable. That's where GoPure's Tighten and Lift Neck Cream comes in. I've been using it, and honestly, I love how my neck looks and feels. This powerful formula is packed with clinically proven ingredients that visibly firm and smooth in as little as 4 to 8 weeks. All GoPure products are cruelty-free, paraben-free, and sulfate-free. With over 1 million jars sold, this beauty secret is no longer a secret. For a limited time, our listeners get 25% off GoPure with code MARRIAGE at checkout. Just head to gopure.com, use code MARRIAGE, and you're all set. And after you buy, do us a favor. When they ask where you heard about GoPure, tell them it was from our show. We're back, and we've been discussing how chronic illness and health challenges don't have to be the end of intimacy in your marriage, regardless of what those statistics say. That you can actually put strategies in place. And, if you're healthy today, you might actually start putting these strategies in place now to be proactive. If you are dealing with something, these are more tools to add to your toolbox while you're navigating your illness. It's not an either or. It's not just like, well, you know what, we're healthy, we don't need to listen to this episode. It's no, actually, these are really good skills and tools for all of us, right? And the first one, and Tony alluded to this just a few minutes ago, is redefine intimacy beyond sex, right? There are a lot of medical conditions, a lot of medications and whatnot that will kill libido, make sex painful, all of it. And so the act of sexual intercourse may not be feasible. It happens. So how are the two of you going to redefine intimacy, sexual intimacy, that closeness and connection through the sexual? How are you going to redefine that for your marriage? Right? Are there other ways that the two of you can bring pleasure to one another? Are there other things that you, for the season or for the duration of this illness, can refer to as your sexual intimacy and understand that that's what you're doing, knowing that the act of intercourse is not possible? Right? Only the two of you can determine what that is. You're not going to hear Tony and I say, well, you need to do this, or no. It's a conversation, likely multiple conversations.
I would suspect it is, and I think it's, a lot of us don't want to do this, but I think it is a trial and error navigation. Like, did we enjoy this, or do we put up walls because we're like, well, no, we can't do that, and then never try anything? Where in this time, again, it's between you, your spouse, and God. Like, there's no judgment from Elisa and I on what you choose to do with your spouse. Let me just make sure we understand, like, this is with your spouse. But again, I see this, and when I was looking over this, I was like, okay, if we can have sexual intercourse, and again, I'm going to say from you have an illness, we're going to go from that standpoint. Would it be feasible, and would it be okay if we were still in the same room and I was pleasuring myself? Like, and I'm not saying you're dead sick on the bed and I'm pleasing myself. It's, you're in a state where you're still there, right? You're still fluid and well enough, but I'm still able to have you there beside me and still pleasing myself. Is that something we would do? I don't know. But it's the questions that need to be asked. And I think more times than not, and I'm asking it now because I think in the moment, it may be a little scary to bring that up. And to say it now, it's like, okay, well, I don't know, but maybe I'd ask that because I might as well ask it and be like, can we at least try and see what that's like? And it may not work, or it may. And so, but these are the tough questions that need to be asked, and we have to face them. And again, I'm sharing from someone who's not there, and yet I can still feel myself going like, ugh, would I ask that? Or would I just stay silent and not do anything? And again, I think there's going to be different levels and different times that you're asking. Like, if your spouse is like,
this is not a one size fits all. This is not, and that's why, Tony brings up that example. That example may not pertain to your marriage.
Yeah.
Right. But it's thinking through, like, if there's a disconnect, and I think the overarching umbrella that I put on this is that if there's a disconnect in one of your pillars due to chronic illness, health challenges, whatnot, what are the questions that you need to ask?
Yeah. And hey, if you're have been going through and dealing with a chronic illness, by all means, send us a hug. Share with us what you have done, because I would love for us to read that for others in the one family. Elisa and I are bringing information because we hear it so often, and we're putting ourselves in a place where you may be right now, and you're probably shaking your head going like, nope, that's not the way it is, Tony and Elisa. And you may be right. And I would say you probably are right. And yet, I think for myself, how would I act in these times? And for many of us, we may need to look at that and think about it because it's all moving in different, like the initial, like, let me just put it from this way. If you are diagnosed with something because you've been feeling bad, you've been feeling crappy, and all of a sudden the doctor goes, oh, you're diagnosed with this. I would think there is a period of time where it's like, holy crap.
Yeah, what the heck just happened?
What are we dealing with? And so sexual intimacy may be way out the door for some of you. For others of you, it may be the way that you do get close and connected.
100%.
For some of you, you're going to talk about it because that's the way you verbally process. For others of you, you're in your head. And you have one of each here when it comes to emotional intimacy in this marriage. I'm going to talk about it. Lisa's going to be in her head. So what happens in different stages of it as well, I think are going to be interesting. And we saw it when Dad was diagnosed with cancer. Now, I'd never asked my parents if they had sex while Dad was going through cancer and chemo or anything
that
of
would
that.
Be TMI
Yeah,
on so many levels.
Maybe now later I could ask my mom, but that still would be weird and interesting at the same time question to ask her. Just from a research standpoint. But I did see the emotional connection.
Absolutely.
I did see the recreational connection between the two of them.
Well, and I think, you keep mentioning the emotional, and I think a big part of this is, you have to communicate about what your new normal is, right? About what feels good and what doesn't, about your energy levels throughout the day. And the reason some of these questions are so important is because over the term of a long illness, or if it is a chronic condition, these types of things can fluctuate, right? If you've got, you're trying a new medication and it's impacting your energy levels, if, what feels good today doesn't feel good tomorrow, if different medications are impacting your libido or mood, right? Those are the types of things, like you have to, and I'm saying this to myself because if this happens, like I got to be able, Tony's going to pull up this podcast and be like, you just need to listen to your own words. But he's nodding his head. I wish you guys could see him right now. But it's that communication, because your spouse doesn't know if you're having a good day or you're having a bad day. Your spouse doesn't know if something feels good or it doesn't. Your spouse doesn't know what your fears are or what the physical limitations are. They don't know. And so if we're not communicating to them about what's going on inside of us, if we're not saying things like, hey, I want to stay connected. I do want to stay connected. Can we talk about what our emotional intimacy looks like? Can we talk about physical intimacy? Can we talk about our sexual intimacy right now? And I think that right now part is so important because over an extended period of time, that could change dramatically.
Oh, absolutely. I know one guy when we were writing The 6 Pillars of Intimacy. He was sharing his story. He was in self-publishing as we were, and he was sharing his story where he went from a full-fledged attorney doing his thing to wheelchair bound.
Wow.
Like wheelchair bound.
Wow.
With like a tube in his mouth and his nose to breathe. And he's writing a book. And he shares this story of the deterioration of his body and how his wife is there and how they have to get rid of like the family car because they need one of those minivans that can put a wheelchair in. And I mean, I'm reading and listening to his story as he's sharing it at time, and he can barely talk too at this point in time because like his body is literally shutting down. And the joy you could hear in this guy's voice at times was, I was perplexed because I think about these sort of things and I'm like,
how would I respond?
Yeah. And how's, and they're moving and they're doing this because, one of the things we have here is, build your support team. And so they moved across states, sold everything so they could be closer to family and friends that could support and help them. And I don't know, like this is a tough episode for me because one, we haven't had to deal with something of this nature. We have had times when we're sick, but to be in a place of chronic illness, neither you nor I have had to deal with that in our own marriage. And it's an interesting conversation to have because I think as we do get older, the likelihood something may happen.
The statistics bear it out.
You know what I mean? And so how will we address these types of things or even if we see friends and others that we know, how do we become part of that support system for them?
Well, I think, doing an episode like this, like you said, neither one of us have dealt with chronic conditions. I likely should have said that at the beginning. But the reality is that these are the types of conversations marriages need to have. It's not just that let's have the conversation when we're going through premarital, like, hey, we're committed to this, right? We're staying together in sickness and in health. And, you check that box in a premarital session, but rather going, what, this is like, things can happen. We've seen it with our friends.
And I was just going to say too, it doesn't matter your age. Like
absolutely not.
I've been reading numerous articles, and when we were big time into hiking and out in the woods all the time, you get bit by a tick. I mean, Lyme disease is like, I'm reading about it more now than ever before. And we're talking about people who are just like out in the woods and they didn't know in all the stuff that's happening because a tick. And remember, I had that one tick that bore in really deep.
As soon as you said it,
in Loma Linda, remember
Loma Linda, second story bathroom. I can tell you exactly where I was pulling that out.
But it's not about age. And I think for myself and maybe Elisa, we're 52 and 51 right now. So we have less time ahead of us than we do behind us, unless we live into our hundreds. And maybe we do, and praise Jesus if that happens. But I think that's just where we're looking at it from this. But you may be 30 and be dealing with something. You may be 70 and have been dealing with something for 20 years.
Yep.
I think the bigger thing is here, how are you guys connecting on your pillars of intimacy? Like, what are you doing that's going to be best for your marriage so that you can grow closer and connected in all the pillars of intimacy? This is I got to say, for myself, this is a tougher episode. I will say, because I like to speak into it from an experience we've had or where we've been or what we've gone through. And yet so many of you have reached out to us over the years and just said, can you talk about this more? And so again, we're not experts. We're not doctors. We don't treat people every day and look at them and guide them. What we can do is encourage you and bring you hope. And for those of you who are going through a chronic illness, we'd love to hear your hugs because we'd love to share your stories, what you've gone through, and how you've used the 6 pillars of intimacy to create your extraordinary marriage. So do that. Send us a hug. Go to hugs or send us an email at hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com because we want to champion you too. We see you. We know you. We know there are things that are happening. And yet we know you can create your extraordinary marriage. So you guys have yourselves a fantastic week. We'll catch you next week. Love you guys. Thank you for listening to the One Extraordinary Marriage Show. If you love this podcast, please leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you are listening. Your review helps others find the show and know that it's the right fit for them and their marriage.